What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, freaks and geeks of all ages? I am your host, David Gable, and welcome to the Geek Galaxy. Wanted to talk to you about something today. Now, for those of you unaware, I have seen the Suicide Squad recently released Warner Brothers movie, and I thought it was a grand slam, a fantastic time at the movies. Not everybody did, though. Some people criticized it for being too comic booky, others criticized it for a lack of story, others criticized it for weak villains. There are numerous issues with this film, which I am willing to admit. Now, that being said, I still enjoy these movies. I have a fun time watching them. For me, it's really moments in these movies that are able to prevent me from being disappointed on the whole. For example, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. I never thought in a million years until Marvel started doing what they were doing that Batman and Superman on the same screen in the same movie would ever be a possibility. And yet I got that in 2016. It was amazing to witness. But as many people already know, that movie really didn't service those characters very well. There were great moments and great action in that movie, great visuals, great cinematography, but overall a lot of people went out of the theater feeling disappointed. And now the same is for Suicide Squad. So all three DC connected movies, which are Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Suicide Squad, have ended up being critical disappointments despite being box office successes. Suicide Squad, will have to see how that works out, but it's tracking to do very well right now, which personally makes me very happy. But why exactly are critics giving these movies such a hard time? Why is DC always the focus of so much negativity when movies that are similar to it or go down similar paths seem to get passing remarks? That's what I want to talk about today. Now, it is my opinion that when it comes to DC films, I think they're getting a little more criticized than they actually need to be, considering there are so many other terrible films that get much more praise compared to the DC films. But that's a discussion for another time. What I really want to talk about right now is where DC could maybe take ideas, maybe change their formula a little bit to be able to make their films more overall enjoyable.
Number 1, hire a head producer / idea man.
Now, I think what one of the biggest issues has been right now is that the DC films, despite being all united and all canonical in their own world, there hasn't really been a figurehead or like a head storyteller, head writer, whatever you want to call it, that's been leading the charge and keeping track of where everything's going. Or at least that was the case until about a month ago when DC properly put famed comic book writer Geoff Johns as the head of their creative offices and filmmaking division of DC Comics. Now, while Geoff Johns has never actually done much producing in Hollywood outside of the DC films, which his first might have been Green Lantern, I might be wrong on that, but it might have been Green Lantern. Geoff Johns has a wide berth of DC Comics knowledge. He's personally written Green Lantern, he's written Flash, he's written Justice League, he's written Aquaman. This guy knows his stuff. And as a DC fan who's read his work, it's incredibly relieving to hear that there is someone like him with his knowledge, with his mindset, kind of running and organizing this whole DC movie program. Now, the films, when it comes to what DC has put out so far, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad, were all in production and all already had the green light to move forward without having Geoff Johns sort of shepherd the way or give advice. But now in terms of DC films, we're at the tipping point where Wonder Woman, Justice League, and everything that follows after it will fall under Geoff Johns' creative input and creative control. For those who have been disappointed so far with DC, I would say to hang on until you see Wonder Woman and Justice League, because those might be the first indications of sort of turning the tide for the DC films. Personally, I've loved DC films so far, but I can totally understand why people think creatively it's a little bit of a mess. And I think having Geoff Johns sort of spearhead the entire organization is only going to help it in the future.
Number 2, focus on story, not the moments in the story.
The second thing that I think has been the biggest issue with fans and moviegoers so far has been the fact that there is a deep lack of true storytelling within these movies. When you compare these films to Marvel and you see how Marvel obviously has coherent paths that its heroes take, DC has had a little struggle constructing such stories so far. Honestly, a few moments in a film or a few cool action sequences won't save it from being a critical disaster in the end of the day. So no matter how cool I think it is that seeing the Joker and Harley Quinn on screen doing what they do, fighting Batman, how cool that is, it's not going to help the movies in the future. It's not going to help the Suicide Squad do what they do and actually make them relevant or actually make them have purpose in their movie. Honestly, DC, if they keep going down this path of big moments, they only have so many more that they can go through. I mean, with Batman v Superman, it was the first time we saw multiple DC characters from different comics on the same world together. With Wonder Woman, you're going to have the first female-led superhero movie, something also very new. Now, Jeff Johns, who I already mentioned as being the creative head of DC, helps to craft the Wonder Woman script. So hopefully, we can start seeing little attitude changes there in terms of storytelling. Sure, it's going to be an uphill battle for Johns personally because he's traditionally written for comic books, which are a completely different medium from movies. They have completely different ways of going about themselves. Personally, from understanding his understanding of the characters in the DC world, I have complete faith in him, and I think he's going to be really the one to be able to change this attitude of putting moments on screen and actually giving stories that flesh out the characters.
Number 3, borrow what works from Marvel and use it for yourself.
But I really do think that it's not that big of a deal to take something that works and put it to use for your own purposes. And look, let's be real, at this point, not a whole lot of new is being done, either narratively, either visually. It's all being recycled and replicated at this point. If DC maybe had the balls or maybe some of the intelligence to be able to adapt what works for the Marvel characters and bring it over to DC, I really don't see what the problem with that would be. I mean, really, after going to see Suicide Squad and seeing how much fun those characters were having, it really did give me the feeling of something like Guardians of the Galaxy. These two gigantic comic book identities, they borrow from each other, they challenge each other, because that challenge usually creates success, it usually creates perfection. That's what happens in the business world. I mean, you look at what Apple does. Apple is always trying to lead the market in terms of consumer products, but then companies like Samsung always retaliate with something that's also vastly interesting, but totally unique in their own right. Comic book movies can do the same thing. Why can't they? Why shouldn't they be allowed to do that? Why do you decide how these comic book movies run? Let them do what they do, and you just get a good movie in the end of it. Anyway, those my rants, those my thoughts. What do you guys think? Honestly, just this buzz has been filling my mind. It's actually giving me a hard time going to sleep some days. I mean, hell, I love these characters so much at DC. I love these movies that they're putting out. They've been a lot of fun for me. I understand why other people don't like them, but I was just wondering if maybe through discussion with you and me, we could figure out why that's such an issue. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm sorry if the camera was a little shaky. I'm still in the middle of a move. I'm living in my brother's room right now. It's quite a hassle, but maybe things will start coming in and I can do something a little more professional level. You can go check out my blog, thegeekgalaxy.blogspot.com. I write stuff there, very similar to this, but it's written, so if you don't want to hear me talk, you can always see me write. Follow me on my respective social media, and everybody out there, have a good day. Live long and prosper.